Welcome back to Gary's Practical Workshop. Now, if you remember in the last video, we went through quite a lot of side parts on the engine. Just to recap, we took off the transmission cover, we took off the detent lever, all the area around there with the spring, etc, etc, that was all removed. I was a little bit alarmed, as I said on the video, just so you guys can see, this is the bush which sits on the top of the output shaft where your sprocket is, and that's full of rust. And also, when you look on here, just going to take you off the pod a minute. If you look on here as well, we got rust on the output shaft, which is really not good. However, that will all clean up. The engine at the moment is in a mess. We know it's in a mess. It's probably done quite a lot of miles, and it is 50 years of age. So all in all, you'd expect that. On the other side, we had problems taking this off. If you remember rightly, just to recap, the kickstart housing was, if you look carefully, I think I showed you on this one, it's got rust all over it. And that was stopping me from bringing the cover off because the seal couldn't get over the rust. But again, that will all polish up. We'll put that in the lathe and clean that up without taking away any of the tolerances of the shaft. Clutch has been done. We've removed all that. We got to take the basket off, but we can't get the basket off until we split the crankcases. Now, oh, you an all apology, I've been calling it split the cranks, and it's not. It's split the cases. You know, age, call it what you like. I don't know what it is, but not thinking straight is split the crankcases. This is what we're going to do today. The target today, well, all the bolts are out, which were on the other side. The 4 bolts on the top of the crankcase, because obviously it's inverted. You haven't got to have binoculars to see that. We want to take the oil pump off. When the oil pump's off, we'll start going around the cases and undoing some of the main bolts, and then we'll do that carefully, and then we'll be ready to strip the case, this bottom case, from the lower case, because it's inverted. Now, Kawasaki are pretty clever on this one. Bear in mind this is in the 70s. There's 3 holes. There's one there. See if I can see if I'm getting you in the right frame. There's one there, there's one about there, and there's one about there. And what we do, we take 3 bolts, and we use those bolts to slowly turn from the other side, or from this side. I'll have to check this side, yeah. And what it does, it jacks up the case, this case, which is the bottom case, but now the top case because it's upside down, and it lifts it equally. So we break the seal, but obviously we need to make sure and double check that we've got all the crankshaft, all the crank bolts out that hold the cases together. And some of those also go through the journal on the end of the crankshaft. So I'll put you back in the pod. I've got a friend of mine here today, which you might hear him and me having a good old chin wag and a laugh in the background. He's going to help me go through this. He wanted to see this engine being split, so I'm inviting him up today. And this is Andrew, who's one of the guys who is a member of the guys which I got to know when I first moved up on the local Z1 Owners Club, when I was looking for tools to do the 1100. If you haven't seen the Z1100 being stripped, there's some videos which you can go back to. But yeah, I got to know him through the group that helped out with some contacts to supply some Kawasaki tools, and that's how I met Andrew. Here he is here, look, just so you can all see him. Right then, let's get cracking. Let me just see if you're in frame. Yeah, that's all right, that's good. Now if I get in the shot, folks, I apologise now, but sometimes it's quite hard not to. Right. Now, some of these bolts we found so far are quite loose, so I want to be a bit careful, and I'm not going to go in there. Right, what we're going to do, guys, we're going to make a start on the oil pump. And for those of you who have seen this before, these 3 bolts just hold the pump on the dowels. When you normally lift it out, they normally come out pretty well. Having said that, if you cast your mind back and look at the Z1100 video, the oil pump is the same, much the same pump. And I had a stud one of these sheared off on this one, which left me in a bit of a jam. It's I was quite pleased with the way that video went, because I made a little jig that went down the hole, so that when I drilled it out it was absolutely bang in the centre, which was good, because if the drill wanders into the aluminium you're in a bit of a 2 and 8. I'll try not to get in the shot, but we'll see how we go. This might need a bit of a tap. It's on dowel, so metal on metal. So we can rock it off. Tricky is to try and come up level. There he comes. Now these 3 bolts, I'm going to put them back in. They're not necessarily in the right hole, but it keeps the bolts with that unit, which is good. I'm going to put that on the tray. Right, that's on the tray with all the other bits. This was the dowel I was telling you about just a minute ago. The bolt that goes through here, I'll take you off the pole a sec. Just wipe my hands. The bolt that goes through there for the oil pump, it's sheared off. If we look down there, you see the threads. But obviously, as I was saying, that bolt's sheared, and I made a tool the same size as the dowel to go in the hole, which I made on my lathe. I know not everybody's got the fortunate to have a lathe, but it was very handy. That's when it comes into its own. We turned a piece down with a 2mm hole, and once we had a marker in that hole, so once we had a marker on that snapped off bit of thread, we could then drill out and helical it, which went quite well. Better keep that, don't want to lose that. I'll put you back in the pod. So now we're going to start making moves to undo all the bolts, which will hopefully separate the crankcases. I don't know how these are going to be. I hope we don't get any shear off. In fact, I'm going to use a bigger wrench. I don't like using the impactors. I know I keep on banging on about it, but I don't like using the impact gun because you've got no feel. That click you hear, I don't know if you did hear that click, but that was the click I was referring to on the last video, where it gives. Let's get round to the other side. Once you get that click, you normally know that the bolt's given and you're okay. We can just slacken these off. Click. It's a lovely sound, that click, because you know you're not sheared the bolt off. That one didn't click. Now we'll come round to this side. Going to move things around a little bit, folks. I always put my engines, if I can, on cardboard because it makes it so much easier to move them around to get to certain areas. So they're all done at the back. Need to follow around. Now we're coming to the front or the side. These ones I will do last because these are directly holding the crank in. So we just want to take the outer ones off first, the 10mm ones. I'll try not to get in the shot. Once I got them loosened off, then it's reasonably safe to use the new member of the family, this little chap. I haven't had any yet that make me worry about them shearing off, but let's keep our fingers crossed. Yeah, I've done those two. So now I can go round with the wrench and zip them out. Mind you, it helps if I put a battery on it, doesn't it? Now some of these are longer than the others. Got a bit too carried away there. Try and take it gently. Now, here's the thing. If you look at that bolt there, you can see the white powder on it. And this is the danger. It's a chemical reaction you get between the steel bolt and the aluminium. And I expect a lot of you guys know this already, but the danger is when it gets into the threads, that's when you can get a problem. And that's when you can get the bolt seize into the threads. But luckily, so far, we've been all right. I'm going to get a little rag or a little space, make a space where I can put all these bolts. Just bear with me, folks. Pays to, just out of curiosity, cut that. Just for a note, I tend to make a bag. No, I don't make a bag. I get a bag and I just mark on there where they come from, especially if there's a lot of them, because some of these are going to be different lengths, and if you've got all the bolts from the area that you write on the bag, then you can sort of work towards putting them all back together when it's all cleaned up. Just going to write on the bag. Right, so all those. Now if I ask Andy here, who's being very patient in the background, if you can hold that, Andy, I'm going to pass them to you if you just stick them in the bag. Did I miss that one? That one was bad. Oh, just hit the camera. That one was not good. We're lucky to get that one out. I think if I'd have gone onto that one with this wrench, it may have sheared. Now we're going to be using some of those bolts as the jack bolts to split the crankcases, but we won't do that just yet. Just get them all out. 1, 2, 3. There's a spot there for jacking. There's a spot there for jacking. 1. So those are the 8mm. We'll leave them later. We've got to go through the crank on that. So let's go around this side. Let's bring it round. So we can keep it in the frame, as it were. Oops. That was a bit crazy. That's better. Get your rag. And take out the back ones now. Now I loosened these off, but the torque still kicked in then. Yeah, there's one there. Ooh, should loosen him off manually, but never mind. Special bolt. 1, 2, got one there, which I missed. Of course, the last thing you want to do on this is to start jacking at these points, this one here and the 2 at the front of the motor, and still find out you've got bolts on the crank, because it ain't going to do it any good whatsoever. Got this one out by hand. Can't see. Oh, there's another one there. There's always a sneaky one. Oh, he's loose. There's a long one. That's what she said. I should edit that bit out, guys, in case there's little boys watching. Right, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15. I think that's it. So now they're out, I'm going to start making a move on the bolts that hold the crankcase lower half to the top half, but also hold the crank in place within the case. I'm going to spin it round for this. It's a bit long-winded, isn't it? So I think that's 13mm, let's check. Nope, it's 12. You okay?
Just a bit camera shy.
Right, there is a sequence for doing these up, and I'm going to try and follow that sequence for undoing them. I only need to undo 1, 2, 3, 4. Let me get your at the pod a minute, because this is an important point. These four here hold the cap, which is in the middle of the crank. We can only get to that, well, we could get to it now, but there's one particular bolt there that we can't get to, so we leave that in place anyway. So the ones I'm concerned of is this one, two outer ones, and the same on this side. It's like a mirror. Put you back in the pod. Battery. Right. I might need the impact driver for these because they're going to be really tight and the engine may swivel on the bench, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to put the impact driver on a low setting and see how we go.
Gary, can I just ask you a question?
Yeah.
Does it matter which sequence you undo those in?
In my opinion, I don't think it matters so much when you're undoing it. I always tend to loosen them off a little bit to release the stress, if there's any stress, which there's bound to be in the casing. But the most important thing, I think, is when you put it all back together. Yeah. Then you tighten it down in the sequence. And Kawasaki put that in the manual.
Yeah.
So let's see what we've got here. That's tight. I might need the bigger impact driver actually. Let's go for the bigger one. Now there is always a risk when you use an impact driver, as I've said many times, but these are so tight you would need to be able to hold this motor still whilst turning that, and that's not going to be easy. So under these circumstances I find it probably better to use this, which I know goes against the grain from what I've been saying in the last video, but sometimes you've got no choice. Looking for a 12mm, there's a 12mm. That one's come. So is that one. I should have gone from those two over to those two. I went to start that one, so we're going over to the second set on the other side of the engine, inners. He's gone. Peel away a bit of that gasket. He's very hard. Let's have another go with that one. I think this battery's low. Might need to charge a battery up actually, to be honest with you, Andy.
Where's the charger going?
I've just changed the battery, folks, on this impact drive. I'm hoping I've got enough muscle to do it, and I've set it up higher on the torque, so let's see what we got. That's got it. So those two and those two are free. Now I'm going to go back to these two and do these. Now these should be okay, but they are outer ones. Let's try that one. That one's really, really in there. Let's go for these two. I think I'm low on battery power. Yeah, I need a bit more muscle. Is that one on charge, is it?
Yeah.
Let's have a go by hand.
Got me to hold the engine.
Yeah, that might be useful actually. Just got to go that way.
Let's get these on.
Just take the extension off. Well, what we're going to do, we're going to see if we can steady the engine. Andy's going to hold the engine and see if we can do it by hand. I don't like the way that feels. That doesn't feel very good. I'm going to put some heat on that one.
Sure.
Ready?
Yeah.
No good, I need to get her. Ready?
Yep.
He's got that. That's good. It's a pity that one doesn't go the same. Let's try once more. Oh,
It's nasty, isn't it?
Gonna put some heat on that one. Right guys, just to let you know, this particular bolt is proving to be a bit of a pig. So we're gonna see if we can put some heat on it. This is the part where it bolts into, so I'm gonna put some heat all the way up down there. All the way up down there, all the way up there, and all the way down there. Now it could be that when these two halves were joined, some of the mating surface compound may have got into the thread. It's difficult to say, but that's why it could be so hard to get out. Probably cut some of this out because it's quite boring watching a flame on a bit of metal.
Do you want to do a bit of juggling or something? Or?
Right, let's have another go by hand. In there.
It's horrible, isn't it?
So I'm going to go with the wrench. Sometimes we might try another trick, which is to give it a bit of a belt. Where's my hammer gone? That shock sometimes helps. Being careful not to hit the casing, of course. I just hope that's not sheared off.
Oh.
It has. So we got a bit of a job there. I think that was going on the hand wrench because it didn't feel very good, and this has just obviously made it worse. This is why you need to be so careful with these. With a bit of luck, I don't know how far that's gone in. Yeah, it's gone into the metal, so we will have to drill that one out, but we'll see how we go. Right, let's move things around a little bit. I still need to get these out, so I can probably get them out with that and the extension. So written, so yeah, it'll be fine. So let's just compare. I'm going to compare the lengths, see how much we're missing on the bolt, and as you can see it's quite a bit. But let's see how we go on that one. I might make another jig to go into the hole so that it drills what's snapped off in the casing smack bang in the middle. That way we can then drill it out and helicoil it. Still a bit annoying though.
Those inner ones are shorter, guy.
Yeah, so as long as we just get them all apart, I can sort that out at a later date. Right, just going to go around and spend a bit of time checking. Just want to show you something, guys, in relation to that bolt that snapped off. I'm going to take you out of the pod. Again, just to reinforce this, looking at this point here, when we took this bolt out, you can look inside there. You can see it's relatively clean. The light's not going in there that well, but then we look at the one that snapped off, we can see a lot of yellow powder, which really spells out what's gone on. That bolt had seized in there. Right folks, coming back to this, we've more or less got everything prepared to split the crankcases, but we have come across a bit of a problem. I might have mentioned it earlier in the video, but there's a hole there, a hole here, and a hole at the back. Now these three holes are special. You screw your what was or supposed to be a 6mm threaded bolt in there, and it jacks up and separates the casings. The trick is to do it equally, but it turns out that the one at the back and probably that one looks in the best condition, but probably that one as well, but this one and the one at the back, as I said, there is no threads in the holes, which really puts the cat amongst the pigeons. So I'm tapping a thread here, which is 8mm. If I can work this, and I hope I can, I will then tap this hole for an 8mm thread right the way through on all three locating points, because clearly whoever wants to break this engine apart again, they would have a problem if they can't use these points as jack points like they're supposed to be used for. So that's where we're at the moment. I'm going to come back on this because this is going to take a while, but we're cutting a thread and hopefully this may get us out of the woods. Right guys, we just cut a thread in here, but the tap doesn't allow us to go right to the bottom. So what I'm going to do is probably put, if I can, put a small nut, maybe 5mm nut in that hole for this bolt to push on to lift the case. But as I was going round, and I said earlier, I always try and do a check. I'm going to take you off the pod. I was going round checking for all my bolts before I went ahead and done that. And there's two here, look. Very easily missed. So we got those two out, all the rest at the back, but those two need to come out. And I'm hoping they should come out fairly easy, but we won't know till we know. So I'm going to put you back on the pod. Right folks, we managed to tap threads 8mm. It turns out that they're 8mm anyway. It looks as if they just were clogged up, but the tap has cleaned it all out. And we're using some 8mm bolts, 2 at the front as I said earlier, and 1 at the back. And we're just slowly, half a turn at a time on each one, to prise the crankcases apart. And if we look down here, I'm just going to take you out the pod. You can see there that it's slowly coming apart, and that line follows obviously all the way around the cases until we get to that side. That's not quite so pronounced, but maybe we need to turn that one down on that side a little bit more. Now bear in mind they're on dowels, so we need to be a bit careful here. Yeah, now it's come up. So it's a little bit out of time to have a nice level lift. Gonna put you back in the pod. I have to confess on camera, there was one bolt that I nearly forgot. And we can all do it very easily. I'm going to show you that because it might not necessarily apply to the engine that you ever work on, but some of these that are taken out when the engine's the right way up, you can see they're easily hidden. The trick is, what I find is the best thing to do is to count your bolts. If you count your bolts and you know you've got them according to the manual, then you should be alright. Can you keep your eye on that, Andy? Mm-hmm. I'm going to swing the whole engine round now, guys, because I need to take this off in a certain way. So the best way to do it is to have the gearbox close to me. I've got a bolt to pull on here and 2 bolts at the front. So let's see what we can do. All the selectors should come out with it, with nothing in the way. Can you grab the just move the book? Now the kickstart shaft should obviously just fall out there, that's not a problem, but we'll make a mental note of the way that goes in. I don't think I'll be taking all that apart. I might take this end off and see if we can clean up where that rust is. But apart from one broken bolt, which I'm going to show you now. This one here. That's a shame it's not deeper in a way, because I've got no way now of holding the jig that I was going to turn on the lathe to go into the hole. So that's going to be pretty tricky to get out. In fact, very tricky. We might have to centre pop that and drill it by hand, which could be well, if we're not careful and that drill wanders, we could be in a lot of trouble. But we'll see, we'll see. Just for the camera, kickstart, input shaft and clutch basket, lay shaft, gearbox shaft, which is also the output shaft. The dog teeth on here, I don't know if you can see these, the dog teeth look really good. There's no beveled edges on the side of the dog teeth, so that looks as if it's had minimal wear, and that's on all gears as well, so that's really good to see. I will take the gearbox out at a later date and we'll go through the gears and make sure they're all alright, but they look pretty good. In fact, the only wear I can see is on that gear there, where the selectors have been rubbing a little bit, but I don't think that's critical whatsoever. Crankshaft looks very good, but then it's Kawasaki, you'd expect it. No end float on the big ends, but then they're all rollers, so they're going to be pretty solid. We need to take this cap off to get the crank out, but that's something I'll do at a later date. So that's what we set out to do today, was to split the crankcases. So I'm going to put you back in the pod.
Hi folks, it's Gary here at Gary's Practical Workshop. I've been doing the editing on that last video, which was splitting the crankcases, and I have to say, for me, something really funny happened. You may remember when you look at the video, I announced that there was a friend coming up to pay a visit. He was very interested in seeing the crankcases come apart. He's got quite a few bikes himself, and we may be working on a Z650 at a later date, which will be quite an interesting video if we do the engine together. We'll see what happens on that one. Now, the funny thing is, as I do a piece to camera, you can see, if you keep your eyes to the left, you'll see a hat. A hat moves across past the toolbox. Now, lots of people have said to me, you're very serious on your videos, Gary, you're very serious. Normally, I'm not such a serious guy, but when you're doing an engine and you need to make sure everything's right, otherwise you could really cause some serious damage, you need to do it right. It needs to be done right. So I'm there being serious and showing the camera and you guys what's going on, and Andy goes around the back and you can see the hat appear. I'll say no more. Have a look, see what you think.
I'm going to take this silly light off. So that's it for today. I'm going to sign out for guys. If you like what you see, do click and subscribe, hit the little bell. Thanks for viewing, thanks for comments that some guys have put into the previous videos, and I will be back at a later date with working on what we see there, the gearbox, the clutch and the crankshaft. Although, to be honest with you, there's probably not a lot we can do with them. We will check them for limits and fits and any backlash in the gears, but generally speaking it looks in very, very good condition. Bear in mind, folks, bear in mind, this is an engine that is 50 years of age, which all in all, you know, I just think is absolutely outstanding, really. Outstanding. Anyway, I'll be back at a later date with more of this, and I hope you enjoyed it today. So it's Gary at Gary's Practical Workshop signing out. Cheerio for now, folks.